When a sister says, hell no, you may be seated in the presence of the Lord. When a sister says, hell no. When it comes to biblical symbolism, one can become very confused about women being made in the image of God. Most stories in the Bible are positive about men, but women are often betrayed as the problem. Eve messed Adam up. The temptress, Delilah, messed Samson up. The victim, Tamar. And indeed, the picture for women based on these stereotypical scriptures paints a bleak perspective and prospect for women of faith. But once God steps into the religious story, it becomes apparent that it is through his relationship with women that we can better understand the transformative nature of faith for those women whose faith has touched God and whose lives have been touched by him. Deborah was touched by God. Deborah was a judge. She was a woman, a wife, a warrior, and a source of wisdom to whom the people flocked for help. The world in which she lived was a patriarchal world. Women were considered to be weaker, to be defective, to be inferior. And the world in which we live has not changed very much since Deborah's day. Many in our day think women should stay in their place. But God showed the world that he will use a woman just like he will use a man. And God will sometimes use a woman to do what a man is afraid to do. He did it with Deborah in the Bible. God did it with Yah Santwa in Ghana. God did it with Barbara Jordan in Texas. God did it with Rosa Parks in Montgomery. God did it with Harriet Tubman in slavery. And God perhaps did it with some of the sisters sitting in this sanctuary right now. And so the task for us is to recall the stories of women of antiquity, our ancestors, and yes, even present day mothers and sisters of the faith whose lives help us better understand the ministry of Jesus and our Christian witness in general because of the life of faith that they have led. This life of faith is always radical and often marked by unnamed sisters. But for many of us who call ourselves Christians, we know all too well that although the women go unnamed, we benefit from their actions. As a people, we must affirm the outrageous and audacious and courageous and willful behavior of women who wanted more and in greater depth than what was considered good for them. They are women who were responsible, who were large and in charge, who were serious. They are the cultural conveyors of our society, and they represent the cultural yearnings of our people. And as such, we do not have to dig too deep to understand what these sisters experienced through the years. They are the ones who work to make our conditions better by standing in opposition to a society that has offered us very little. They are the ones who uttered the words that made you shrill when I announced my text. They are the ones who make you feel uncomfortable because they don't comport themselves like you think a lady ought to conduct herself. They are the ones who refused to be bought or sold or compromised or detoured or deluded or delayed. They are the ones who have the unmitigated audacity to say what is determined to be rude and unladylike. They are the ones who have the nerve to say, hell no. Look at your neighbor and say, hell no. Don't be scared. Come on, y'all got to help me preach in here today. Look at somebody else. Put your hand on your hip like black women do when they mean what they say, and point your finger at them and say, I said, hell no. You see, hell no is a saying of righteous indignation. It's not blasphemy. It's the opposite of blasphemy. It's an acknowledgement of the reverence for ourselves as holy and without restraint to resist whatever seeks to silence our voice and make us be quiet. Hell no. That's sure enough grown folk talk. That's sure enough mature folk talk. And when uttered, you can visualize the exclamation point that follows in the form of cutting eyes between his teeth and spewing from pursed lips. Women throughout the annals of history reclaiming and reviving and revolutionizing black women's roles in the church and in society have used the term hell no. When asked to stop pressing through the crowd to try to get to Jesus, the woman with the issue of blood said hell no. When we're asked to leave Jesus alone and stop bothering him while she was trying to get her blessing, the Syro-Phoenician woman said hell no. Y'all ain't gonna help me preach today. When protecting the bodies of her sons from the scavengers and the jackals that were seeking to feed on their flesh, Rizpah cried out, hell no. When I was placed in special education in junior high school, although I was supposed to be in the highest honors class, my mama came up to Van Sickle Junior High School and went to the principal's office and said, hell no. When told to go to the back of the bus so white folk could sit down, Rosa Parks looked at somebody and said, hell no. And there are some sisters in this room today who can well remember times when the righteous indignation in you rose up and you had to scream an emphatic hell no. And today we need some sisters and some brothers who will scream hell no. Oh, there's a black person murdered in the United States every 42 minutes. Somebody ought to say hell no. The FBI Uniform Crime Report indicates that blacks, who make up 12% of the population, account for half of the murder victims, with most of them being killed by other black folk. We ought to scream hell no. The destructive dealings that take place in our community are more dangerous to us than ISIS and more deadly to us than weapons of mass destruction. We need the righteous indignation to rise up in us and say, hell no. 840 million people in the world are hungry. 34 million people in America, including 12.1 million children, live below the poverty line. 1,400 women a year die as a result of domestic violence. Somebody ought to look at these things and say, hell no. We can't deal with this statistic anymore. We can't deal with this paradigm anymore. We can't sit by and watch what's happening in our community destroy our churches and our families. Somebody ought to be willing to say, like Miss Sophia, hell no.